okay, let's take an Apple iPhone, right? And let's take the brand Apple. And I said, well, what words, what images, what experiences come into your mind when you think about the brand Apple? And you could be thinking sleek design, Steve Jobs, everybody thinks expensive. And so the question becomes, well, then what is a brand? And really, a brand is a promise of the value you know you're going to get for it. And in its simplicity, it's a sorting device. Because if I said to you, here's a Coca-Cola, here's a no-name brand, same red wrapping, we're always going to naturally go for the Coke because it's that promise, that association of joy, of happiness, and everything else they tell us. So in the same way, people also become brands. And if we just use the example here of Oprah, and I said, well, what are the words? What are the images? What do you think about when you hear Oprah Winfrey? And we all think about humanitarian. She's an amazing listener. We all think about her show. And Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, said it best. And he said, a brand for a product is like a reputation for a person. So in the same way, the brands we spoke about create these words, these images in our minds, so do you. And this session is about how do you create the desired words that come into people's minds when they think about you. So how do you become a brand, and why is this relevant? Because in this, whether you are here as an entrepreneur, whether you are in a company, your brand is your sorting device. How do people decide? And that's what we're looking to unpack today, because your brand is the promise that you make implicitly or explicitly. It's what do people expect of you when they engage with you, because brands that keep their promises are consistent and trustworthy. And from the minute you are engaging with your customers, your stakeholders, your suppliers, even the ladies in Checkers or Woolies or Pick and Pay, you've got a brand, because we're either labeled as the impatient customer on the phone who's not listening, or the smooth professional who gets the job done. And our brand's a story. And it's a story other people use to tell themselves a story about you. But no one knows us as well as we do. That's why we've got to take ownership and consistently and persistently show up in a way that's amplifying the brand that we are. Because it's not what we say about ourselves, it's really what other people say about us. And even if I said to you, think about your colleagues, think about the people you work with, are there words that come into your mind? Absolutely. So this is where we've got to take ownership of that. And so the starting point, what I want you to think about, we're not going to, in this session, write it down. But what I want you to do is in the session and even afterwards, start thinking, what are those words that I want people to associate with me? Do I want to be reliable, trustworthy, loyal, creative, innovative? But then the question becomes, okay, it's all well to want to be those things. What am I doing to demonstrate it? How do I demonstrate loyalty? How do I demonstrate creativity? Because we can't walk around with a t-shirt that's got the values we want to be known for. It's all through our behavior. And it's understanding everything we do and say, and sometimes the things we choose not to do and say, that communicates our brand. So I'm going to take us on a long journey today, a long journey in a short space of time, because branding is not one thing. It's many different areas. And so I want to give you a lot to think about. So if I do move fast, apologies. But by the end of this, and you can rewatch the recording, is for you to think, where are the areas that I need to perhaps have a little bit more self-awareness so that I am showing up in the way that I want. And so this is the roadmap that we're going on. But just if we look in the middle of the circle, attitude is everything. If you think about the people with that can-do attitude, they want to show up, they want to go above and beyond. Your attitude is probably the foundation of how people associate us. Self-awareness, how aware are we of our blind spots, what our strengths are? And at the end of the day, it's accountability. Am I blaming for my actions, or am I choosing and owning those actions? And we never get to a point where our brand is complete. We never have to worry about it. And I use this picture to remind us that it doesn't matter where you are, you can make a wrong choice and it really can compromise your brand. But we are human and we are fallible, and we are always going to make mistakes. And this ad came out of KFC a few years ago in the UK. And what happened is they ran out of chicken across 700 stores. But the point is, they didn't blame, they didn't shame. They went, this is what's happened. We're owning it. And in fact, their brand equity was so much stronger for how they handled it. So, what I want you to remember is that it doesn't matter if you make a mistake, you can always behave your way into trust, especially if you own it. This is what's happened, this is what I'm doing to fix it. And a good crisis can be a great opportunity to even amplify your brand even more. So, when we talk about physical presence, this is the first part of the roadmap. The message we send out every day is shaped by the way we choose to dress, the way we hold ourselves, and how we connect with others. So we want to ensure we are giving the best possible impression. And this isn't about manipulation. This is about intention. This is about who do I want to be and what am I doing to make sure I'm showing up like that. And very quickly about dress, it's not about what brand I'm wearing, how fancy I'm wearing. It's always be appropriate to the environment and authentic to you. But the biggest part about dress is, am I inspiring trust in other people? So you can look at this image and it's clear who's inspiring trust for us. And a great quote from Sylvia Ann Hewlett, she said, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. But again, this is, who are the customers that you are seeing? What's important to them? Are you showing up in a way that you're inspiring trust to them as well as those around you? And it comes down to authenticity. Am I behaving the same way, whether I'm with someone or whether I'm by myself? Because that is the essence of a great brand. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated because when it comes to communicating, and if you see really what this slide is saying is that it's not so much about what we say, because when you are sharing a message, only 7% of the words that come out of your mouth are how someone's interpreting your message. It's all the nonverbal. It's what was your tone of voice? What was your body language? What was your pitch? And people are making decisions about not even what you are saying, the way we do it. And so some things to remember, and I'm just giving you little basic tips. So when it comes to the verbal, the basics of please and thank you, even if someone does what they were meant to do or paid to do, but acknowledging that person. Likewise, if you're sitting in a boardroom or a brainstorm and there's someone who's going, well, that can't be done, that's not possible. Think about the image that creates. We want to be the problem solver, the solution finder. But it's the other 55, the non-verbal, that we really need to start paying attention to. So some things we need to think about is eye contact, because the sooner we are making connection, it's saying, hey, I want to connect with you. I'm present. I'm focusing on you. Because how many times have we felt invisible because someone was trying to talk to us over their phone or not really paying us that attention? And your body language is your greatest tool, because if you look at the top, there's a series of what they call power poses. And there was work done in New York by Amy Cuddy. And they said, well, we know mind influences body, but can body influence mind? And what they found is just by standing in a power pose for 2 minutes, so that, the victory pose or the Wonder Woman, your cortisol, the stress hormone, went down and testosterone went up. So you can even use your physiology to make you feel in a powerful state. Because the truth is we stand in a powerless way much more often. So this is being aware, whether you're in an online session or sitting in a meeting with someone, are you walking in, even if you feel nervous inside, your body is going to say more, because that's the thing about consistency. You could feel really nervous, but if you're standing powerfully, it's what are you signaling to other people, but also what are you signaling to yourself? And my 4 Ps for powerful nonverbal. The one is presence. So we've said, give someone your attention, be focused. The other is preparation. So before you're going into a meeting, have you gone onto LinkedIn? Have you had a look at who you're meeting? I had a client who ran Comrades and he put it on his profile. So when it was the first time I met him, I said, wow, I saw you're a Comrades runner. And he was so excited that I'd done my research and we got into a great conversation before starting the meeting. But then also participate. So we've all got that voice that says, don't say anything, don't share that idea, what if it's stupid? But the more we participate and share our values and opinions in a meeting, the more powerful our brand becomes. And then the 4th one is being punctual. And some of us struggle with this, but what we need to understand is that if we are late, so that person is always 20 minutes late, how do you think about them? Oh, they're so unreliable, they can't plan. Maybe I need to lie about the actual time. And so it's just an awareness that what is the impression? It could signal I don't respect your time, even if it's not your intention. And the truth is, clients, they will buy into you before they buy into your product or service. And it's, are we role modeling that brand that we want to be? And so some things to think about when it comes to your work. And this is how people buy into you. It's, are you consistent? So do you always deliver? And if there's a problem, are you transparent? Do you say, look, there's going to be a delay. This is what we're doing. And it's always about the long game. It's always, what am I doing to consistently build trust? Pick up the phone, especially if we've got to deliver bad news. We tend to hide behind email because it's easier. But if we can phone and say, look, this is what's happened, this is the delay, let them hear it in your voice, but also that you took the time, it goes a long way. And always, it's just integrity. Are we following through on what we said and what we're doing? So these are the basics, but this is the thing about branding, is that I talk about a series of BLOs. It's blinding lights of the obvious. And I'm not going to tell you something you don't know. But in challenge, common sense isn't always that common. And so this is really about reminding you about the stuff you do know, but that you may tend to forget when it matters. So it's really thinking, what do I want to do that adds tremendous value? What do I want to be famous for? How do I want to serve my clients? Because we're rather remarkable or invisible. And really the essence of your physical presence, what is the promise you are willing to keep? And make sure that you do everything in your power to live that. So the next area we're coming on to is our interpersonal presence. How do you deal with stress and conflict? Because you could tick all the boxes on the verbal and the nonverbal, make, your work is amazing, but the image you might create is that you are very difficult to work with. And that becomes part of your brand. So these are some things to think about. The first step to mastering conflict, interpersonal skills, is self-awareness. Because the more you know yourself, the better prepared you are for any situation. And so that's just asking yourself, okay, what kind of personality do I bring? Am I defensive when it comes to criticism? Is it always somebody's fault? How do I react when I'm stressed? And the more you can plan in advance, the better you're going to show up. And how do we do that? So we know our cars have got these brilliant internal warning systems, and so do we. Our early warning system is that body wisdom. So if you think about the last time you got triggered, the last time you got a rude email, someone said something and you felt upset, where did you feel it in your body? So for some of us, it's in our throats. For some of us, it's our jaw. Some people feel their face burning. Some people feel it's in their chest, their stomachs. And if you're going, I don't know what she's talking about, it's another self-awareness to say, I don't even pay attention to that. Because when you do feel it first, and you will always feel it in your body first, that's an early warning system to say, take a pause, take a breather, withdraw from the situation, find a way just to remove yourself or take a breath so that you're going to respond from a place of mindfulness, not from a place of reacting. So some things with conflict, it's, for me, the most important thing is assume positive intent. I was working with someone recently who they didn't deliver their work. And she said, well, they're doing it on purpose. They're doing it to defy my authority. And actually always assume the worst. Now, how does that deal with if you're trying to have a working relationship with someone? So assume positive intent and get curious. Understand why. And really the biggest lesson is always to react to the outcome, not to the event. So that really is about thinking, okay, now that I know what I want to be known for, how do I want to work with this person going forwards? Because we are going to have courageous conversations, and it's not easy. But if you think, what are the outcome of this? I want them to know how I'm feeling. I want us to come to a solution, but I want them to feel like they're not broken. I actually want them to feel that they can come to me again and we've got a good relationship going forward. Okay, so if that's my end result, have I thought about my intention? Have I thought about the words I want to use, the tone I want to use? Am I in a calm state to have the conversation? And just spending a few minutes thinking about it is going to, maybe it's not always going to be the way you want it, but that's all you can do is prepare in advance. And the other thing which often comes up is when you hear yourself say, but I expect them to know that. I expect this of somebody. You want to now move away from expectation and create a new agreement. So we'll give you an example, because sometimes we have these high expectations, but we haven't necessarily communicated what we want or what we need from that person. And so let's say someone always shows up late to a team meeting or a meeting with you. And instead of going, well, I expect them to come on time, and there's this underlying passive aggressive that starts to build up, right? Is you could say, look, you are often coming 10 minutes late to the meeting, and it really throws everybody else off, or whatever it is. Can we agree that you will show up on time? And what will happen is one of two things. Either they're going to say, you know what, the reason I'm always 10 minutes late is the meeting before runs 10 minutes late, so I can't actually get here on this time. Maybe we can move the meeting. Or they'll apologize and they go, wow, I'm so sorry I lost track of time, but now you've got an agreement. And what does that do? It means the next time that person is late, you can have an accountability discussion without feeling like the bad person and say, look, we agreed you would come on time, and now they've got to own it. So it's a much better approach to have these kinds of conversations. And don't hold it in. You know what happens when we shake a Coke and everything goes flying. Often we do that. Something will happen and we think, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything, but it's a stacking. And then someone will do the silliest thing or the slightest thing wrong and you explode. And it feels like it comes out of nowhere for that person. It's remembering, even if you have to say, look, I know this seems small, but can we discuss this so that you don't get to that point? And always think about, the last time you got triggered. A rude email, a WhatsApp, a message. And often in that moment, we're so triggered, we just want to respond straight away, but that can damage your brand. And so again, be aware of it. Write the email, write the message, don't send it. Wait 24 hours, sleep on it, then read it. And I'm sure you're going to delete it immediately or phone someone, but you cannot respond when you're angry or emotional, because we're always going to say something we regret. And especially and another thing for communication is when we're online, guys, try as much as possible to keep the camera on, because think about the power of the nonverbal. So if you're having a discussion with someone and your camera's off or their camera's off, they can't see that, they just folded their arms, their face dropped, they smiled. We lose all of that nonverbal. So where possible, have the camera on. And it's always just saying, is delivering this consistent with my desired reputation? Do I need to say it? Sometimes the best question is, do I want to be right or do I want peace? And really just being real. Okay, what would be the best way to answer that? And the other thing with interpersonal is, firstly, we've got to be able to take feedback, because it shows a powerful brand when someone can give you feedback. And even if you just respond and say, wow, thanks, you've given me something to think about, digest it, and then think about how you want to respond. But when we're defensive, it's almost saying, well, I'm not coachable, or I'm not prepared to see something else. And then just be aware, and you'll go through this in the slides, you'll get them. Have I thought about how I want to present feedback? Am I landing it in a way that a person feels built up rather than feels like I'm breaking them? Now, an interesting question when it comes to interpersonal is, who finds it hard to say no? And we all find it hard to say no. And I ask this because, we fear saying no. What if I let them down? What if I upset them? I'm trying to be this amazing brand, and if I say no, I'm going to sabotage that. But the truth is, if we don't learn to say no and protect our boundaries, we are the ones that burn out. And it's just understanding we need to separate the relationship from the request. Because if someone asks us to do something, we think denying the request is the same as denying the person, and it's not. So find that courage and compassion. Even if you say someone invites you to a networking event, you could say, thank you so much for thinking. It's my family time. Please think of me for the next one. So share some other ideas. How do you say no without saying? Because we all think we've got a time management problem, a people problem. And so if someone asks you to do something, first thing you want to do is say, let me check my calendar and I'll come back to you. So now look at your calendar. And if you can see you overloaded, don't say yes, because you are only going to put yourself under more pressure and compromise quality for quantity. And so often, if you just say to that person, look, I'm under the gun, I'm swamped until Friday morning or Friday afternoon work, 9 times out of 10, they'll probably say yes. If it's an emergency, but a genuine one, yes, we show up. Yes, we come to the party, but that should be the exception. So, in the fear of, and sometimes we need to teach people, because if someone comes to you always at the last minute because you're that yes person who always makes a plan, at some point you need to say, I wish you'd come to me a week ago. I'm fully booked. I can help you from Monday. And so we get what we tolerate. So we've also got to teach people how they need to treat us. And just some other things, ask for the real deadline. Let's not assume everything's urgent all the time. We've said manage expectations, and maybe it's an alternative solution. Maybe it's not your time. Maybe it's a resource. Maybe it's someone else who can help. And it's not an easy thing for us to do, but the more we get better at saying no, the more that we are going to be less stressed and we are going to deliver better and show up in the brand that we want to be. And especially on a weekend, if someone asks you to do something and you're saying yes out of guilt or fear, it should probably be a polite no. You've got to protect your downtime. You've got to protect your recovery time, because if we don't do that again, we are the ones who are going to burn out. Okay, so these are questions. I skipped through a lot of stuff. Just it's nice content for you to go through afterwards, read through it in the notes. So for me, the most important message about today is our intrapersonal presence. How are we showing up to ourselves? And confidence starts in the mind, because it starts with the thoughts you tell yourself. And our mind is always eavesdropping. Now, we have between 12 and 60,000 thoughts a day, and they say the research is that 80% of our thoughts are negative, whether it's battling guilt, shame, the inner critic, I'm not enough. And we just recycle these thoughts every day, not stopping to check in with them. And what that does, it affects our operating system. So, your phone's operating system is pretty brilliant. When it needs to upgrade, you get the message, midnight, does its thing, you wake up, all the bugs are gone the next morning. Our operating system is fully manual. So we need to check in and go, what am I thinking? What am I believing? Because they affect the story we're telling ourselves. And if your brand story is, well, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm an introvert, I'm bad with numbers, I'm bad with speaking, our mind is eavesdropping. And if we fight for our limitations, we get to keep them. So it's thinking, well, what's a better story? Because if we are walking into a room and the message we are saying inside is, you don't deserve to be here, I'm not enough, or anything like that, it shows through your body. It's going to come through your physiology. And you can't motivate or do things from that state. So it's really being clear and having that self-awareness. What am I thinking? What's a better story that'll serve me? And it's often part of the story and a big thing, because it's not so much about what we do, to show up as a great brand. It's also thinking about the energy. How am I showing up? And that's largely determined about where do you put your focus. So why I bring this up is that, especially, as entrepreneurs, there's a lot that goes on. And when we get stressed, we tend to focus on everything we can't control. And when we focus on the things we can't control, we get anxious. And I'm not talking chronic anxiety, but it's those looping thoughts. How am I going to get it all done? We've got those looping all day, and it tends to get in our way. And all anxiety means, it's that internal warning system, and it's going, wait a minute. You are either trying to focus on all the external things you can't control, or you are trying to control your future. And as soon as you're living in the future or trying to control the future, you're going to get anxious. So we want to do an audit. And so think about a situation that's bothering you. And you go, okay, what do I know in this situation? What don't I know? Who can I reach out to? Who in this amazing community? Who's done this before? There will be things you can influence, but it's the stuff you can't control we've got to let go of. So let's say you've got to have a hard conversation with someone. You can influence you. You can plan, you can think about the outcome, you can think about the words, the timing, the word, how you want to express it. But we tend to focus on the worst case scenario to go, this is going to go so badly. This is going to go terribly. They're going to fire me, or I'm going to lose the client. And we bring it into the present and we start living it. So it's sometimes just remembering I can't control their reaction. I can't control the weather. I can't control the commute, but maybe I can listen to something interesting. And the more we put our focus in what we can control, the better we're going to show up to whatever the situation is. And the best way to change focus is with a better set of questions. Because what is thinking? Thinking is asking and answering questions all day long. Can I do this? Is this practical? What if, and it's just questions. So if you change your question and you say, well, instead of why do I self-sabotage? And you go, well, how can I grow from this? What's the lesson here? And you use a better set of questions to get you thinking differently, focusing on possibilities. And the other part to remember is when we're talking interpersonal, it's remembering the word we attach to the experience becomes the experience. So if someone says, how are you? What's your default? We all go, oh, I'm so stressed. I'm so burnt out. I'm exhausted. I'm broken. Those words affect us. It creates a stress physiology. And I know this sounds really simple, but the most powerful things are, rather than, I'm so angry about this, you could say, well, I'm a little peeved. Or instead of, I'm just so disgusted with them, I'm so curious. And it's not lying to yourself. It's a better word is going to change the experience. If you tell yourself, I'm stuck, I don't know what to do, I'm stuck. How do you feel when you're stuck? Helpless, hopeless, there's nowhere to turn. But maybe if you said, I'm a little uncertain or I'm a little confused, you can get out of uncertainty. You can create certainty. So really pay attention to the words that you're using. And especially the words always and never. Things never work out. This always happens to me. Do not bring your past into your present and future. And it's just also remembering the words we feel what we think about. And then those emotions get amplified. And we know it. One person can walk into a room angry and it just shifts the whole dynamic. And so just remember, you are responsible for the energy you bring to those around you. And so the more, and we're going to talk about how do we energize ourselves. And that's a great brand. If you can walk in and influence the room because you're positive, because you see the possibilities, that does so much. Because think about the alternative and that person who doesn't bring the hope, they bring the negativity. How does that brand influence the room? So it's less about doing email better and more about doing energy better, because your brand is nothing without energy. You need energy to inspire yourself, to show up, to do the work you want to do, to serve. And so energy is everything. And we know this. And I just want to remind you again that you've got to put yourself in the calendar, but you've got to schedule yourself into the calendar. But even more so, respect your slot in the calendar as much as you would anybody else. And often you think to yourself, but I'm so busy and I've got my own business and I just don't have time for this. And so willpower is not a strategy, but consistency is. And if I said to you, do you have 15 minutes a day? And I know you'll find 15 minutes a day. Check your email less, check the socials less. Everybody's got 15 minutes. And so what you want to start to do is own the first and the last 15 minutes of the day. And if you can train yourself to wake up a little bit earlier, so stop binge watching Netflix till 11, and that is where your brand is built. If you can do more than 15 minutes, amazing. But if you start with that and you wake up and don't check your phone first thing, because that puts you into a reactive mode, and you use it to meditate, to exercise, to journal, to read, to pray, to whatever that thing is that you need, because if you are putting yourself into a peak state, that's the way to start your day. And the only reason you hit snooze is you haven't really decided. So the night before, make a decision. This is what I'm doing tomorrow. And then what can you do to set you up for success? Can you leave out clothes? Can you leave out the book? So that as you wake up, you straight into what I call the micro win. And it's keeping the promise you make to yourself. If you say, I'm going to wake up, and you do it, that's where you build your self-confidence. That's where your brand is built. It's when you break the agreement with yourself, that's when we dent our self-esteem. And it's not just the to-do list, guys. It's also your brand is your to-feel list. So how do you want to feel at the end of each day? exhausted or overwhelmed, or content and grateful. And the difference between achieving that is, what are the activities in your calendar? So if you want to feel more relaxed, show me what you're doing. And it's also to remember, it's not just about the self-care stuff. It's also about, what are those things that I need to energize me? And you'll go through these questions, but it could be baking, it could be painting, it could be drawing, it could be gardening is a big one, actually, that's come up for a lot of people, is that if I just have 20 minutes in my garden, I feel like I'm refreshing myself. So what are those things? And then put them in your calendar. Don't just wait for leave, so that you are giving yourself these little pockets, to look forward to, but that you energizing. Because when your energy is good, guess what? That's where your best thinking comes from. That's when your best creativity comes from, your best problem solving. So we've got 2 left. And I'm going to skip through this one a little bit quickly, because I'd rather spend more time on the last section. But what we need to remember is that every touch point is an opportunity to express your brand. And so if you think about email, right? When you get a mail, you can delete it, save it, or come back to it later. And what helps us decide is the name of the sender. And so what you want to remember is, when my email hits someone's inbox, I want them to know that it's valuable. I want them to know that they are going to, that the value in that email is there for them. And so just think about the basics. Think about when someone spells your name wrong, when the grammar's not great, when it's too long. And it's just saying, what are my emails looking like? Am I taking the time to just reread it, to check everything? Because if something like their name is spelled wrong, they're going to go, well, is the rest of this email even credible? These are things to look at. Things like WhatsApp, we don't always think about it, but your profile picture, does that match? Does that inspire trust? The way we communicate to clients, friends is differently, but we do communicate now. Is it professional? How are we communicating? Are we on time? Do we respond timeously? And Grammarly is an amazing tool that if you say, well, it's not my best with grammar and spelling, if you put in Grammarly, it fixes all of it, and there's never an excuse for a spelling mistake. Also, again, we've said meetings, the way that we're showing up, remember, whether our body language, it's all these touch points. People are making decisions about us. And so, sometimes it's, well, what skill can I demonstrate in the next meeting? Am I being focused? Am I on time? Is there an agenda? And it's just thinking in advance, how do I make this a better meeting? And that people feel like they've got value from the meeting. It's not just a meeting about a meeting. And the last thing is just to remember, sometimes with email and phone conversations, it's happening almost on stage, and sometimes there's not context. So if you need to send, if you're thinking of mailing someone because it's a difficult conversation, read the mail and say, is this ambiguous? Could this come across or be perceived in another way? And always pick up the phone. If something doesn't feel right in mailing it, writing it, always pick up the phone, because then you can be clear and nothing can be misinterpreted. And just remember as well, if people want to find you, they're going to the socials. And I'm not getting into a long thing about it. It's just remembering we've got to be accountable for what we put out there, for what we share, what's part of our brand. And one message is to say to everyone, please be on LinkedIn, because it's almost expected that you are there. And it's an incredible thought leadership platform, connecting platform, networking platform. There's actually an old photo. It's an old slide. But use LinkedIn as a way to promote yourself, to put out interesting articles, read other people's stuff. But it's, as I said, it's expected. So I really would encourage everyone to be on there. So what we've spoken about is, we know how we want to show up physically. We've spoken about the headspace. What's our self-talk? How are we showing up in a virtual presence? How do we deal with people, stress, and conflict? But really, your brand, the essence of what makes us powerful, is our network. It's the relationships that we've got. And how do we start to improve those? And it's the trick for brand you is making sure you control the package and the message that it's sending. And when we think about networking, it's not the old school ways of going to an event and we collect business cards that we never use. It's about connection, conversation, and collaboration, because conversations are the currency of change. And it's asking yourself, are you having enough conversations? Are you having the right conversations? Because the more we do engage with other people, that's when we add value. I was having a conversation with a client who mentioned she was going on maternity leave. It was her first child, and the whole work-life balance conversation came up. And about a week later, I saw an article on Harvard Business Review talking about the benefits for kids with working moms. And I just copied the links, put it in an email, said, I came across this article, thought you'd appreciate it. Have a wonderful day. And so for me, I wouldn't have been able to add that value had I not taken an interest. And so even it's, what am I doing to add value? If you listen to something interesting, if you see something a client might enjoy, send it off. You never know. And although we know this in theory, what stops us having a conversation? And most of the time we go, well, I don't know this person. What am I supposed to say? Or maybe you're socially anxious. So just remember, everyone has got a past, a present, and a future. You could say to them, what did you do before you started this role? What's your biggest challenge now? And before we know it, we're going to be saying, what are you doing for December? Or there's always going to be a future something we can ask them about. What's the next project? What's the next thing? What's the next book you're reading? And when you are not sure, ask them to talk, ask them questions, get curious. The more that you show an interest in someone, be as interested as you are interesting, that is where you elevate your brand. And often we think, well, I don't have time, but guys, network most when you need it least. But you know, the thing that stops us the most is fear. And we all know the phrase, well, if you don't, false evidence appearing real. But what's the fear? It's the fear of the unknown outcome. What if they say no? What if they don't like me? What if it doesn't go well? But success is measured by the amount of uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have and uncomfortable actions you're willing to take. And it's often the thing you fear the most, which is the thing you most need to do. So if I said to you now, what is that thing? What is that thing you know you should be doing, you want to be doing, but fear's holding you back? That is your compass, because that's where your growth lies. And instead of worrying about what will I lose, it's, but what if? What if it does go well? What if I can pull it off? And if you don't, you'll take the lesson from it. But that's how you really start to grow your brand. And it's not so much about, we're so scared of action. What's the cost of inaction? So what will it cost you and your business and your brand if you keep delaying? Where are you going to be 3 years from now? But really the most important thing that we want, when I said right in the beginning, what do you want to be known for, is trust, because that's what builds relationships. And it's about credibility and consistent behavior. And one of the easiest ways to build trust is listening. And that sounds really obvious. Well, of course I listen. But think about the last conversation you had, right? There's generally 3-4 ways that we enter a conversation. You can listen to win. So someone will go, well, I just want to be right. And it's ego first. I know that in the end of this conversation, they need to know that my opinion is the best. Not always the most effective. But most of us go in with a listen to fix attitude, and someone's talking to you and they're sharing something and you're not really listening to them. You're thinking, how can I fix it? How can I solve it? Because for a lot of us, if I can't fix it for them, I can't add value for them. But remember, sometimes just holding space, just listening, most of the time people just want to share without advice. And so where we want to go is listen to learn and listen to understand. Because we cannot influence someone if we judge them. But when we understand them, we can influence them. And the biggest gift that you can give someone is your presence and listening. And sometimes all you can do is say, wow, I'm so grateful you shared that with me. If you need to talk about it, I'm here. And that can add more value than trying to fix it. Other things we need to be able to say. And this is where we got to be vulnerable. And vulnerability is the human side of leadership. And to build a powerful brand is being able to say in those moments, you know what, I don't know, but let me find out for you. Let me do the research. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Because think about how we feel when we hear that from other people. And that is really just showing the true and human side. And empathy. And when I say empathy, it's replacing judgment with curiosity. It's thinking, wow, I wonder what would make them have reacted in that way. What would it be like for them? And it's really thinking inside out, not outside in. What's it like for them? How could, and the more curious you can be and really think about it from their perspective, the more you're going to find a solution. And the other thing to think about from the networking side of things is exposure, right? So what are you doing to create visibility for yourself? Do you write a newsletter? Can you post on LinkedIn? What are you doing that you can be seen? Not everybody wants to be seen. And self-promotion is an art. So are you good at also sharing your wins? And wow, I did this really well. Or bringing in the team and saying, gee, team, this is what's happened. Couldn't have done it without you. But some of us think that self-promotion is an arrogant thing, but we do need to be able to talk about our successes. And, talking to sponsors and mentors, especially in this old community, there are phenomenal programs to find people to help you get where you want to get quicker. So I would really encourage you to take that on. And what we need to remember is, our brand is like a maze, and things will come up. And sometimes we have to go forward, sometimes we have to go diagonal, sometimes we go backwards. But at every new stage, and at every new opportunity that comes up for us, we have to keep reinventing ourselves as a brand. We have to keep staying relevant. So it's asking yourself, am I being relevant in the area that I'm in? Am I staying up to date with industry trends? But also, what am I doing to stay relevant to me? Are you listening to things that inspire you? Listening to maybe stories of other entrepreneurs. Wow, this is their challenge. And so, but the most important message as well is that as we go through different steps, right, as we evolve our brand, we have to essentially go from our comfort zone to our courage zone. And that's growth. Something, if you think about where you are now, you had to have left your comfort zone at some point to get there. And what starts to show up for us is that in order to move into that courage zone, we need to embrace uncertainty. And the quality of your life is proportional to how much uncertainty you can manage. And as a brand, that just means saying, can I be comfortable with discomfort? This is new. And it's just reminding yourself, you're going to learn it. You're going to get there. It's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable in the beginning, but it's so normal. It's not, and it feels like imposter syndrome, but it's really just the next phase. And so how do we get through that discomfort? How do we manage that uncertainty? And that's about acknowledging your past wins. Because most of us are very bad at acknowledging our successes. We go, well, only when I get to that thing or that income or that fill in the blank, then I can celebrate. But it's really about looking back and saying, well, gee whiz, look where I am now. What would my 20-year-old self say about me now? And they'd probably be really impressed. So when you feel uncertain, when you feel self-doubt coming up, because it's so normal, use your past as evidence. I am the kind of person who can do this. Look what I've done. There's no reason I can't do that. And this is also where we need a growth mindset. And so that growth mindset, there's 4 ways to develop it. The one is develop your own life curriculum. So if you were in marketing, there was a certain thing you needed to study. And this is about you going, well, what are the skills I want to build? Maybe I do need better people skills or presentation skills. You decide what that looks like and you start forging your way so that you are developing yourself into the brand you want. Look at your wins, because that's your gift. That's what confidence is. Confidence is your belief in your ability. I know I can figure it out. We said question your story. Is it serving you? But remembering that challenge is part of the journey. Think about the hardest times you've been through. How did you grow from that? How did that shape you into who you are today? And it's just remembering, and that's the biggest thing, is that sometimes we fear failure, right? Or maybe we do fail, but take the learning. This is how we evolve our brands. It's about saying, okay, if I assess that situation, what would I do differently? Where did I contribute? What do I know now? And build that into your brand experience toolkit so that it doesn't happen again, because this is how we learn. This is how we grow. It's not something to be, obviously no one wants to run into it head on, but it's inevitable. And a growth mindset is being able to take the lesson and drop the story. So what I want to end with today is I've given you a lot of things to think about, right? And this is the final tool to really help you to think about how do we bring this all together. And if I said to you, are you the same person that you were 5 years ago? You're going to say no. So are you going to be the same person in 5 years' time? Definitely not. So now if you can see current you and future you as two different people, you are going to start making very different decisions on brand you today. So if I said to you, who do you want to be in the next 2 years? Where's brand you in 2 years' time? And you could say, well, I'm in this position and now I'm doing a lot of public speaking. Okay. But the you of today has told yourself you're an introvert and you're really shy and you're terrible at speaking. For you to become authentic to future you, current you has to get very comfortable being uncomfortable quickly, which means you need to put yourself out there, do as many speaking engagements that you get over that fear, you get comfortable so that you are setting future you up for success. And so this is the thing, when you've got a clear future vision, this is who I want to become, you're going to make very different decisions and you're going to start to act in your own best interest. So you'll go through these questions. It's thinking, okay, well, future me, what are they doing? What kind of business is it? How much are they making? What kind of clients do they have? What kind of conversations are they having? Where do they live? Where do they go on holiday? How do they impact the world? And the more clear and fun you can have with who is future you, then it's about saying, okay, well, let's say from a health perspective, well, does it really make a difference to go for the run? Does it really make a difference to drink the water? Yes, because every decision is shaping the future consequence. Even if we can't think 2 years out, how do you want to end the year? Let's think about December. Well, do I want it to be the same energy levels I've got today, or do I want it to be more? What can I do now to set me up for success? Because the way we motivate ourselves is having a bigger future. Sometimes we get lost along the way because we stop creating a compelling future vision, and that vision can change. It could be something today, and in a year you go, gee, I thought I wanted to go there, but really this is where I want to go. That's fine. And so these are some prompts that you can ask yourself. It's how, if your future self came to you today, how would they tell you to live? Knowing knowing where you want to go, what are 3 things you could do today? What are 3 courageous actions that could put you on the path? And the other thing is also future vision. So if you think about 3 years out, and the best exercise that you can do is what I call your time capsule. And if you write yourself a letter from your future you in 10 years time to today, telling them what you've achieved. So I ran this workshop for a team, and the one lady said to me, so can I start my letter to say, dear doctor, so-and-so, because she wanted to do a PhD. And so write to yourself and say, so it's you in 10 years, writing the letter to you today, everything you've created, everything you've achieved, everything you've done, don't let your mind interfere and have fun with it. Because we get 2 kinds of people. You get someone who says, I have 20 years of experience, or someone that's actually repeated 1 year 20 times. Because that person, they do the same mistakes, they attract the same situations. And so it's I'm reinforcing what I said earlier. Take the lessons. Everything you're doing now is growth. Everything you're doing now is setting you up to put future you up for success. And so my favorite quote that really embodies what a personal brand is from Austin Kleon. And he said, build a good name. Keep your name clean. Don't make compromises. Don't worry about making a bunch of money or being successful. Be concerned with doing good work. And if you can build a good name, eventually that name will be its own currency. And so it's always remembering, we are always works in progress. We are not where we're at. You can keep reinventing. And I'm not saying don't be authentic, but you can change your mind. You can decide to do something else. We are never one thing. And that if we can see it like that, we never get to the point where we're finished. We can always be a lifelong learner. Always look for things to keep inspiring yourself. And Woody Allen said 80% of life is just showing up. And Tom Peters, who's the guru of personal branding, said showing up also means starting. He says, well, did you show up at the gym today? Because if you did, you 80% of your way to the workout. Because what's the hard part? Just getting there. And it's the same with opportunity. It's the same with what's coming up for you. You're 80% of the way there if you just show up to it. Show up to the opportunities. Show up to the things that scare you. Because ultimately your brand is about creating the best version of yourself and then showing up as that best version of yourself every day. And so when you wake up tomorrow, when you're going, well, that was great, but what do I do next? It's rather than saying, well, what do I want to do today? What would future me want me to create today? What would future me want me to do today? And choose one thing that's going to start to get you closer. So from my side, thank you so much for joining, for showing up, for being here on this branding journey. Trace and the team, thank you for having me. I know there's some things, admin stuff that you want to do at the end, so I just wanted to give you some time to do that.
Thank you so much, Laurie. Every time I spend time with you, I gain so much value. I really felt as though you were speaking specifically to me today. And I'm so grateful for the hour that you've given, not only myself, but the AutoJet network. I'm sure so many people who were not on the call today will find the utmost value in your content and what you share. And as always, so grateful. Thank you so much. I will ask you to please share your slide deck so that I can share it with the participants afterwards, especially the ones that registered. And to our AutoJet businesses, staff, thank you for being on this webinar this morning. I know that time is so valuable.